On this week's episode, we share an upsetting story time about our most recent trip to Disneyland.
Let's just say that we had a difficult time getting the Disability Access Service pass.
Yeah, not good. Stick around.
Hey, and welcome to Rare with Flair,
The podcast where two best friends with the same rare disease are out here just living our best lives. I'm your host, Casey.
and I'm your host, Cassandra. Girl, before we get into this juicy story, it's a juicy story.
Juice.
That's why we dedicated an entire episode to it.
Yeah, we said we could not make the conference episode any longer than it was, even though we're sure you were all enjoying it. But we decided to do a whole separate episode, and you guys are in for a treat.
I don't know if a treat, but definitely something a
trick.
Juicy. A trip. Yeah,
a trip. Yes, something like that. Cass, this week is monumental.
Yes. It is. It is for us, and it is for the United States. I mean, yes. I guess it's the Olympics, which is also monumental, but we're also talking about, first...
Drum roll, please.
It is the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Woo!
Oh, that's not what I was going for.
Well, so I remember it because of what you're about to say. But yay! Happy.
But that's exciting.
34th, I believe, birthday to the ADA. Without it, we would not have rights as people with disabilities. So, you know, of course, there's like plenty of work to be done, but it's just really empowering and exciting that we have something like the ADA and so many people that lobbied and protested and made things happen to get it. So... yay, yes. Happy birthday, ADA.
So grateful for the ADA. If you want to learn more about that, by the way, it's talked about a little bit in Judy Heumann's book called Being Human, and I highly recommend that book to everyone listening. The ADA is amazing, and honestly, episodes like this, what we're about to record, make us grateful to have it, but also see that we have a lot more work yet to be done. But something else monumental. So it's really a monumental week in many different ways.
Truly.
Cass, but something else monumental that happened was actually yesterday, as of this recording, which is July 29th, was our 4-year podiversary.
Wow. I cannot. That
4
seems
years.
So unreal to me. Like
unreal.
I remember recording 4 years ago, and wow. And like, you know what? I'm proud of every single episode of this show that we have ever made.
Me too. And it's kind of, you know, I feel like it's been long enough where when we look back, we really can actually be nostalgic about it because it has been that long now. It's not just like looking back over a year, even though a year is still an accomplishment, but it's like 4 years. Like, I'm able to look back at who we both were at that time and see like the amount of growth and change and just like our lives, and it's pretty crazy. Like, it just feels like a different lifetime in a lot of ways.
We have a bachelor's degree in Rare with Flair podcast.
That's so true. And you might be wondering why we're not doing a podiversary episode since we have done that every year, but don't worry, we have a special one coming up next. So
if you look at the number of this episode, you may be able to guess what is happening.
Yes. And by the way, thank you to all of our listeners who have stayed with us either for the 4 years or even just like came on recently. We've gotten some more reviews lately and ratings on Spotify and Apple and other places. So if you would be so kind to leave us a rating or review if you like what you hear, that is so helpful to us, and we're grateful to see it.
We're so glad. And like for everyone that reaches out via DM or email, or if we've ever been somewhere and run into someone that says, hey, I've listened to the pod, whether you're our friends, family, however you stumbled upon Rare with Flair, we're just really happy to have you here. We honestly would probably do this if we were just talking into the void, frankly, because
yes,
we're just
truly.
really passionate about it. But like, to have people that it means something to, that was like Casey's dream. I don't say mine, it's just that it was funny because like we both, and I think we talked about this in our first episode, or at least in our first podiversary maybe, but like we were talking about like, man, so exciting, I hope that, like, Casey was like, I hope we can have an impact on at least one person, right? And because of you guys coming up to us and talking to us and reaching out, we know that we have, and that's so lovely. My dream was, this is going to be lots of fun.
Yeah, and it is. And it still is. We're still having fun, and we still have a lot of episode ideas. Like, we were just talking about more episode ideas. We got to do another cartoon update for you guys. We're still watching cartoons.
We still are.
Don't you fret. We know that's what you're waiting for.
Absolutely. People
don't
are
worry about
on
it.
the edge of their seats. Actually, there are some people who have reached out and been like, I really liked your cartoon episode. So,
which is so lovely.
That's really sweet.
Hey, that's what the pod is all about, is like us just getting to talk about exactly the things we want to talk about, really. I mean, it's our show, right? So,
yeah.
It's pretty fun. Pretty fun. Oh my gosh.
It's so exciting. And I'm really excited for our next episode where we really get to celebrate doing this show for a while.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to really celebrate it. Before that, we're gonna get sad.
Ooh, we're gonna get spicy.
Yeah. Little spicy, little mad, little sad, little bitter, little all the negative feelings you can think of, really.
Like, okay, you guys, like, I don't know, having disabilities is hard. It is hard sometimes. I'm sure this is like the news flash of the century. But, as we've said before, Casey and I both have the same rare disease. We have Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So not only are we visually impaired to the point that we are, like, considered legally blind, but, like, we also have a lot of other medical issues. We've talked about it kind of at length on different episodes of this podcast. But, our daily lives are challenging enough. So when we've gotten accommodations in the past, it's because we need them. And it makes our already challenging lives easier.
Yes. Yes. It makes things more equal to us and more accessible to us. And we've talked about that before, how people have given us some heat in the past for like, oh, you don't need that, or oh, you're getting special treatment, when really it's just bringing us up to like a normal level, because we already have some disadvantages. Right. And so, I mean, do we want to jump into this, Cass?
Yeah, so
the sigh.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
we want to talk about this. It's so much to cover. Okay. So much. Background. So for a long time, I don't know since when, Disney has had something that's colloquially just called the DAS Pass, the Disability Access Services Pass. And in general, what that was that, like, we got to have something called a return time. So you could go either up to a ride, or at some points it was up to a kiosk, and select the attraction you wanted to go to, and they would give you a time based on the amount of people that were currently in the queue, like the current wait time. And they would tell you, if it was a 30-minute wait and you were there requesting it at 1, they would say, come back anytime after after 1:30, and then you could go in the fast pass line and like have a shorter wait. But you're essentially waiting that time, just not in line, so that like frees you up to, do anything besides standing in line.
Yeah, whether that be resting, sitting down, finding a shady area. You're not actually just standing in the heat for like maybe an hour in line. And so, yeah, like you said, you're still waiting that time. It's just waiting in a more comfortable area for you if you have different physical disabilities or mental disabilities that keep you from being able to really wait in the traditional line. Cass and I have used this. Now, we have multiple disabilities, of course, and we'll get into that, but just some of the things, albinism, of course, the sun exposure, both on our skin and to our eyes, can be quite exhausting, especially when there's not good shading. I have some chronic pain issues that can make it hard to stand still that long. Cass has other things. Do you want to get into some of your other...
Yeah, so like I've talked about it. I've had my colon removed for 9 years now, and I have an ileostomy, which is a medical device. Part of the complication with that is that I can dehydrate much easier since your colon removes water. I don't have one of those, so I lose more fluid in general, especially being outside in the heat. I have to hydrate more than the average person. So, that is kind of a big risk for me. And it happens, like really does. I know when I'm feeling the dehydration.
Also, typically you have a service dog with you. This time you did not, but that also just adds more. And, you have to like either take the dog on the ride or put them in a special area. And that also just adds more. And we usually require like up close seating at shows, or we would like to have that and things like that, other things like that. And so
some attractions you can like enter first, even if you're all like going to the same theater, you might be able to go in before others, or they can pull you aside into the like accessible queue and have more preferential seating that is like makes it easier for us to be able to enjoy whatever we're doing. So we've used the DAS before, both separately when going to Disney and when we went to Disney a few years back. We have an episode about it from 2021.
Yeah, and so typically what you would do is you would just go to the park and go to like the town hall guest services. And what you would do is, you don't even have to bring proof. It's similar to like Americans with Disabilities Act of like, you don't have to like prove your disability. You could just tell them I have a disability and they would just hand you the pass. And like sometimes I would even bring a piece of paper about HPS and they never even needed it. They were like, we don't need that. You're good. Just take it. Take the pass. Like some people, okay. And even back in the day, you could even just get the disability pass just for being blind, which I know might not make a lot of sense because like what does being blind have to do with standing in a line? But it used to be just like any disability, you could get the pass. And that was just something exciting, kind of like with state parks, how you were telling me for state parks, you can get a pass for being disabled national parks. So like, it's kind of like that,
And like, I feel like there's so much involved, but I think so the last time I had been in Disney before this was 2022, and when I got the DAS, I was with my family. They did ask a few more questions. I think they were starting to crack down a little bit more, but they were like, okay, what makes it difficult for you to stand in line for an extended period of time? And I mentioned especially my dehydration issue, which is kind of the biggest thing, and they saw that I had my guide dog at the time, and so they were like, yeah, okay, sure. So this has worked before. However, like many good things, people have found ways to exploit it.
Right.
So I remember like there were ads on like Craigslist where like people would basically like pay someone with a disability to go on their family trip in order to take advantage of this like essentially free fast pass because you're disabled. People were making TikToks saying things like, just say you have a disability and they won't ask any questions, and you can get this very special free secret hidden menu thing.
Right, and we got to also add in that recently Disney made this thing called the Genie Plus, which is basically this service, but you pay $20 a day per person.
$30 a day. Sorry.
$30 a day.
I feel like I keep correcting you.
No. $30 a day per person in your party, which is a lot of money. If you have a family of 5? That's a lot of money.
So many people.
The Genie Plus is only a few years old. It's fairly new, and this gives Disney an incentive to make people pay. So they don't want to give just anybody and everybody the disability pass for free, because they're like, hey, if these people don't get the DAS, they're going to pay for Genie Plus, and we want to make that Genie Plus money, because Disney, I do love Disney, but they are nickeling and diming for everything lately. Everything.
In addition to the Genie Plus, it only covers some and not all attractions. For really like popular high value attractions like your Space Mountain, your Splash Mountains, your Big Thunder Railroad, just like really highly contested rides, you have to pay extra per ride. So it's to just have a Lightning Lane pass, which is what they call the Fast Passes now, or the Fast Pass entrance is called Lightning Lane. And so they are truly making so many dollars on a service for the general public. The Fast Pass service used to be free. And then because of making people pay, charging premiums for what was, basically putting free things behind paywalls, and then also people exploiting the DAS, they have now cracked down and made very, very specific requirements for you to qualify now to get a DAS.
Yes, and that specific requirement is mostly they are only giving the DAS to people with a severe mental disability, such as autism. This is their words. Such as autism, where you cannot stand in a line, at all. You're unable to stand in the line.
Their claim is the behavioral implications of a person that might not understand why they're waiting for so long, and they could have a meltdown or an outburst, and Disney doesn't want that. And so in order to, make everybody's experience pleasant, they're giving those folks DAS passes. And we're not here to debate that those people should not get DAS passes.
Yeah, of course.
Of course they should.
The issue is they are highlighting the mental disabilities and completely disregarding anyone with physical disabilities. Physical disabilities and mental disabilities are not comparable. They're like apples and oranges. You can't...
They're literally so different.
Why does one group get it and the other... We're not arguing that group should get it, but we're arguing why do people with physical disabilities not? So, should we start our story?
Yeah.
It all starts online, actually.
Yeah, it does. So, we had heard that this system was changing. And we were going to Disneyland, which I don't think many of us had been to recently, if at all. Mm-hmm. We were a group of 5. Yeah, we were a group of 5. And we were trying to plan ahead, and I decided to Google about how to get the DAS because I had heard that things were changing about it. I saw that there was a way that you could possibly do it online. So I went online, and the system they have in place is interesting because it should make sense. You could go online, you could start up a chat with someone, and then get on a video call and kind of, from the comfort of your own home, explain your situation and why you or someone in your party that would need to be present on the video call would benefit and need a DAS. So I did that. I went on the chat and had to jump through a lot of automated prompts, but then by the time I was like, okay, cool, I'm in the queue to talk to a person on a video call, it said estimated wait 5 hours.
5 hours. That is Era's tickets for Taylor Swift. Okay?
And the fact that you can't go into a system and schedule a time that they will send you a link and you can get on and do your thing. No, you have to have your browser window open with the chat open, and if you leave it idle too long, it'll kick you out of the chat.
Mm-hmm. Which happened to you.
It did. And like when I saw 5 hours, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? And so, you know, I walked around in my house and I did some other stuff for about 20 to 30 minutes. I checked back in, I got kicked out, and I shrugged and was like, well.
Yeah.
I did also try to call after that, and I asked, is there, you know, a way I can schedule an appointment to talk to someone? And I was told that no, maybe try as soon as they open. So I did that, which for me was like, it's like 8 Pacific, which is 11 Eastern. So I got on right at 11 Eastern, and the wait was also 5 hours, so I didn't even bother. Like, I just walked away.
No, I would not bother either. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to have to do it when we get there. So we get there, and the line is extremely long, which is really ironic because all these people who are having trouble waiting in lines for various reasons are waiting there.
Wait in a line.
So Cass and I, before I get to, you know, the whole line situation, I do want to say Cass and I explained our disabilities at the beginning of the episode, but we had a few other people with us, all with other disabilities as well. And the thing is, you only have to, like, the way it works or the way it used to work or the way it should work is you only have to have one person in your group with a disability to get the DAS for your group. You know, if you're going with your family and you can't wait in the line, you get the DAS and your family comes with you. So, you know, not only do we have disabilities, we had someone with us with a pretty significant health concern where if her body is under any amount of stress, it could be life-threatening. Like, this is not just like, oh, my legs are going to hurt when I stand in line. You know, we had some serious actual issues.
It's like no joke. And like, you know, that person, we were all girls. So like she had gone to the hospital for issues like this in the past. So it's not even like, oh, it's a concern that's unsubstantiated. No, they've like had problems before, and she's had to be hospitalized after, I think, even a trip to Disney once.
Right. So even if Cass and I, even though our disabilities are also valid, even if we had thought, you know, whatever, we're not going to wait in this line, you know, we had other people with us too that needed this pass. It, like, you know, like I said, even if there's one person in the group that needs it, the whole group should get it. Like, we all, so...
and I mean, everyone had disabilities in this group, to be fair. Like, and we want to, like, also kind of bring that up, too. So this was after the NOAA conference, so all of us had albinism, at least.
Yes, absolutely. And then some of us had extra things along with the albinism. We waited in this line. I mean, I want to say the whole experience was an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Would you say
really
that's
long.
right? The whole experience was an hour and a half. The line was probably an hour, and the experience itself was probably 30 minutes. I say experience as if it's like a ride we were going on.
That's hilarious.
The experience, it was a ride, a terrible, a terrible ride.
I think it's also really funny because as we were like chit-chatting in the line and hanging out and trying to make the best of it, of course, but like, you know, we were going in with a positive attitude, but like, it was funny because we were like darting from umbrella to umbrella because otherwise we would be standing directly in the direct sun. Yes. So we were like, we were like waiting for people to keep moving forward so then we could jump into the next shady spot because we all have albinism.
We were already getting dehydrated in that line. Like, we were already having trouble in that line, you know? And we were like checking on each other. You okay?
Like,
here, come over here to the shade. You good? You good? It was a hot day. It's July, you know? Like, we were already like struggling in this line.
At least it's not like Florida, like humidity, but it was not cold, like. No. So we get up there and we request the DAS, and it turns into this whole ordeal, which is why the line takes so long, because everybody is taking so long with this. And again, we are chasing the shade, so like I was the one who had all the tickets connected to my account, so I was in the shade, but not all of us fit in the little strip of shade that was left by the building at the time of day we were there. And so, they were noticing that, and we were like, is there a place we had to, I think we had to ask for it. Like, is there a place we can stand where we're not all in the sun? And so they led us around to the back of the building, and that's where this whole altercation begins.
That's where it begins. And like, keep in mind, this is Disneyland. It's crowded, and this is right at the entrance. So like, we are behind the building, but there are a lot of people walking by.
In.
We are in public, in the middle of public, and people are walking by. So it starts out with this first employee, and I've got to say, I do feel for these employees. This must be the worst job in the whole world, because
so bad.
It's bad. It's all day long just telling people they don't qualify, because nowadays with their specifications, basically nobody qualifies for the dance anymore that used to get it. And so they're basically arguing with people all day. So it was such a weird experience. I would use the word interrogation. I felt like we were in a police station being interrogated about a crime. It all started with you, so you had to do it. They were like, we have to question you person by person, which is so strange.
Which I don't understand.
I don't understand, because really, like we said, it only takes one disabled person in the group to qualify for the
and
DAS.
that's what it took in the end. Not to jump ahead, but it did only take one. But, like, I don't know why. They kept saying it as we kept talking to them. We have to talk to each of you. We're going to talk to each of you individually, which they never did doing.
Which felt like, didn't it feel like some kind of crime interrogation?
Yeah,
it's like
I was like, well, our
individually.
Our stories better match up, as if we have stories to match up.
Right. Yeah, I know. It almost felt like they wanted to catch us in a lie or something. Like, so it starts with you. Do you want to
rehash? So they were like, okay, why do you have difficulty waiting in line? And I started to explain my issue with dehydration, and they, I finished talking, kind of gave the little spiel that I've given at Disney before, and it's really quiet.
Yeah. And they asked you a few questions. They were like, how does this affect you at work?
Yeah,
how does this, they
affect you at home? What do you normally do in case? And I was just, I was like,
it was a lot of questions.
It was. I was starting to feel uncomfortable already, because they were getting this perfect stranger was getting a lot of information.
And then here I was standing next to her, knowing I was next, thinking, oh my gosh, what are they going to ask? Because they were just asking a lot of questions you weren't even prepared for. What do you mean at work? How are you supposed to, you were like, I don't stand in lines at work, out in the sun,
Yeah, it's totally different.
They asked you about the grocery store and all. You were like, I get my groceries delivered. It was just a lot.
I'm glad you remember so much more of this. I'm just I totally forgot, and my brain decided to block that out. But
no, and I don't want to interrupt you. I just
no. Thank you for filling in the context, because I forgot that all of that.
Yeah.
And so they kind of thought, and they were like, well, the best thing we could do is basically allow can someone wait in line and you can go outside and sit in the shade and then rejoin them in the line.
And to that I said, most of us were holding canes.
4 out of 5 of us had canes.
4 out of 5 of us were holding canes. So to that I said, they're suggesting that we find the person in the line after leaving. So to that I said, hey, we're blind. We cannot leave the line and try to find our friend again. Not only can we not find our friend can't find us. It's not even we're blind and we have a sighted person trying to find us, there is actually no way that if you were in a line and I left the line, that I could find you again, or you could find me trying to find you. Oh my gosh,
the amount of anxiety that I have thinking of having to do that.
That and then the secondary
awful.
Right. The secondary problem is we're all disabled, so we would have to still choose some unlucky person to stand in the line while the rest of us sat and hung out or whatever, which also is not going to work, because we all have disability here. It's not, we're not going to be like, yeah, Cass, you have to stand in the line for an hour while
take
we
one
all
for the
sit
team.
In the shade. Yeah. So that was their
and that they could provide. No, I don't even. Did they offer anything else in the beginning?
I think another like paid option. I think like you can like pay for this or whatever, and
the genie plus with the lightning lane, and that was kind of
insulting. And they offered like
the
ride. They offer the ride swap thing where like somebody can stand to the side and wait. We know these options, but we want to be able to ride with our friends, with our group that we're coming with.
And that's not that's not the issue that we have. Like, we don't have a problem going on a ride. We have a problem waiting in a line.
Right. So he interrogated you a lot, asking you a lot of questions, random questions. And then we were already feeling uncomfortable, but then they were like continuing down the line. At that point, we were talking about Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome and our other issues that our friends had as well. And at that point, this man was like, I'm going to bring out the medical expert. That's what they called him. Okay. Medical expert. I have no idea what that means. I don't know if this man was a doctor.
Didn't, like, share his credentials when he came out either. Like, we just had to trust that he was a quote-unquote medical expert.
It's just this random man that comes out of this back door. He's called the medical expert. And I was kind of hoping maybe he would have our back, or like we could explain our rare disease and all the many things that go along with it, which we were, we were like, we have like lung problems, we have bowel problems, we have bleeding, like all the things that aren't even necessary to mention, but we were like mentioning all of them, kind of telling our entire health history out in the middle of everywhere in public.
In addition, the founder of our network was also like around, like she was at Disney, and so she kind of hung out in line with us, and then she was trying to help vouch for us because we were telling her about the difficulty that getting DAS would take. And like, she kind of has in her back, because she used to be a nurse, a critical care nurse, so she has kind of in her back pocket like a whole paper about Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. And so when the medical expert comes out, she's like, okay, so they have Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, and she like goes into explaining what that means.
Yep. And she had all these papers with her. She had a QR code. She had all the stuff. And like Cass said, she has nursing experience. So like, she's very good at, and she's the founder of our network, so she's very good at talking about this kind of stuff.
She like regularly talks about this.
Yes. And she had all the things. And they still were kind of just standing there like
I don't like, no. I think the best we could do is suggest these same options.
And another friend that was with us kind of said what I said earlier of like, hey, we totally understand that people with mental disabilities might need this service, but comparing mental and physical just isn't, you can't compare. And why is one getting this service now over the other? And, she was explaining that if she stands in the sun, it could be really damaging. Like, it could be really bad. And like, they say, oh, well, try to find shade, try to find an umbrella. Well, there's not always an umbrella in the line. Like, just, that's not how lines work. You're constantly moving in a line.
Right. And we were already having difficulty finding umbrellas, like, as we were waiting, and we said this, like, as we were waiting to talk to them. Which is why we had to stand in the back of the building in the first place. Yeah, and at that point, they were kind of questioning her. And like you said, they kept saying, well, we have to question you all separately, They didn't even get to everyone.
They didn't even get to everyone. And like, what a weird thing to have to question us separately when it only takes one person. And so
our aforementioned friend who has like the more sorry to cut you off.
No, I was about to actually get to that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was saying, like, our friend that we said has kind of a life-threatening reason to not stand in the line. We were even telling them about that, and they did not care. And we were like, she could go to the hospital. She has gone to the hospital. Yeah. We were like, this could be an emergency. Like, we are literally on call here with her in case she needs to have medical intervention, like there. She has her meds with her, everything.
Like, pretty much we're all aware of her needs and like, what do we do in case of emergency? Like, we were briefed, right? So like,
yeah. And they just don't care. And we were like,
they were just impassive. We were like unable.
If that can't get it, I don't know what can. And it's like a genuine need.
It is so critical.
She needed this.
Our friend has like passed out on flights and like had to be like escorted off. Like, it's really significant, and it comes through like agitation. And so like, you know, riding a ride or just, you know, anything that could cause a sudden spook, if you will.
Yeah.
Could really cause us to, and like, I mean, that feels like a liability on Disney's hands. Like, they probably wouldn't want that to happen on their property, even, like, especially when we're telling them that it could.
Absolutely. And I think I even made, like, a funny comment at one point of, like, I know this literally sounds made up, the amount of disabilities we have.
Because we just kept explaining more and more things.
More and more. Like, well, I have this seat, and throwing spaghetti to see what sticks. It's like, well, we have this and this. Because literally, we even said, you know, our lives are hard enough already. We're just trying to have a fun day with our friends. Like, we've already wasted a good chunk of the day here, and we're just trying to have a good day and navigate the park as disabled women. So one of the people in our group does have
a mental disability.
Yes.
So, and that would qualify per their guidelines. And of course, like, we didn't like lead with that because, you know, that's her business. But also that was like one of the lesser reasons we even needed the DAS, because that doesn't really affect us waiting in the line. It doesn't affect her ability and therefore the group's ability to be able to, like, be standing for longer periods. It's in fact the other more serious medical physical issue that was probably the biggest candidate for, like, why we would have qualified. But the moment that the employee and the quote unquote medical expert heard about our friend's mental disability, they were like, oh, it's like we said the password. It was like, oh, this changes everything. Tell us how that affects your daily life. And then one of our friends with us, who was not prepared for any of this questioning, none of us were. I mean, we're not, you know, you're not given these questions in advance. They just kind of started drilling her about how it affects her life. And it's just, like, upsetting, because it was already upsetting when they were drilling you. It's upsetting to be drilled about these personal medical things in front of everybody, in front of not only your friends, but, like, people walking by. And you're not, like, strangers. And you almost don't know how to answer. It's like, how does it not affect your everyday life? Like, literally every moment. How does it affect? And so, you know, she was trying to come up with answers on the spot, and it's just like, and at that point, Cass, you were like, you know, I was at my breaking point. Not only was I just tired because, you know, you don't get a lot of sleep at conference, but, like, we had been, like, practically begging for like 20 minutes, like, at least, you know, most of the group was just like, look, this is a real problem. This is going to cause this condition will cause an issue for this reason. This condition will cause an issue for that reason. And, like, we were, like, selling our dignity. Yeah. And we were selling our dignity. And as our friend had to explain the lengths and the depths that her mental disability affects her daily life, which was pretty significant when you talk about her daily life and not necessarily, like, the context of waiting in line. It, like, I like snapped, and I was like, this is humiliating. Like, I said to these people, I was like, I cannot believe that we have been broadcasting our misery to the passersby. Yeah. And it's not enough. We don't need to lose our dignity. Our lives are, like, difficult enough. And now we can't even get an accommodation that would make our day more pleasant because we have a lot of collective problems. But even individually, we have a lot of issues. What is enough? Like, yeah, and it's funny. Oh no, go on. I was just gonna say, like, this isn't remotely equity. This is humiliation, and we shouldn't have to sacrifice our pride and dignity as human beings in order to have fun at Disneyland.
Nope. I mean, yes, completely agreed. And it was funny because right the second Cass was like losing her cool on this guy, and she was like, this is quite frankly humiliating, which I'm so glad you did say that. Right as this was happening, a friend of ours who was not even with our group, who we just know from the conference, runs up to, because like this is a perfect example of like how public this was. This whole thing was.
So
she
public.
runs up, hey, fancy seeing you guys here, as Cassandra is like raising her voice to this employee. And she goes, fancy seeing you guys here. And I go, hey, not a good time, not a good time. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, and I like pulled her over for a second and kind of explained. And I was like, sorry, we're really like stressing and this is not good. And, you know, we'll talk to you later. And I ended up messaging her later and being like, love you. Like, sorry. But it was like a perfect example of like, oh, now our other friends are seeing us have to go through this humiliating process in front of everybody. Like, it was just over the top. I was just super angry.
Casey fell silent, and I could feel the tension.
Oh yeah.
Like, and I know that, like, because after I got drilled, I pretty much didn't say much else until I kind of
had a few moments where
you had a few moments where you were like, well, we're blind, we're not gonna fight each other, you know. So like,
I raised my voice, but like, and I can think of
we were both like
too,
bracing ourselves against the wall, like
we were. But what made me so mad is that we literally, I know we kind of already said this, but this is like kind of just like the main mission statement for me, or the main like thing of this whole episode, the crux of this whole thing that made me upset. We are telling you this person has a life-threatening issue, and you say, and then we say, well, they also have this mental issue that doesn't really affect their ability to wait in line. And they go, oh, well, you should have said so.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
That's so crazy.
That's crazy. That is what got us the DAS, and that's not even a problem for standing in line at all. And the other serious issue that we were trying to tell you how serious this is, please understand how serious this is, and they didn't care at all. But then it was almost like though that, you know, they wanted to give it to us, but they like couldn't, like their guidelines, like they absolutely couldn't. And so then when we said, if you say anything mental, you know, in the mental sphere, they're like, okay, well we can, you know, and it's like,
and mental is in like a, you know, to clarify, like a cognitive disability, not necessarily like mental health struggles like anxiety, depression, OCD, you know, that kind of thing.
Even though some people with that should qualify
that can also cause difficulty waiting in lines, but like...
Yeah. I'm sure if somebody has like severe anxiety or PTSD or something, it might be hard for them to wait too, but they don't care. Yeah, it's mainly, cognitive stuff.
It's incredibly narrow.
Yeah. And behavioral stuff, which this person doesn't even have issues with. So that's really
exactly.
Weird.
Yeah, their mental disability doesn't cause behavioral outbursts, like, but
not at all. But okay, sure.
Yeah, sure. It was so wild, and I just like, I felt, you know, while they were then, you know, interrogating her and then kind of setting logistics and getting information, I felt like really cheap. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
And not because we did anything wrong, but like, gosh, like, did we really have to go that far?
Yeah.
Like, I felt like we had crossed so many like personal boundaries.
Yeah.
In order to get the bare minimum, and we only got it for a reason that didn't even make sense.
Yeah, and with things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are kind of used to this, like, you don't have to disclose nature of things.
Yeah.
So, like, in the workplace, we don't have to disclose. With your guide dog, you can bring him or her anywhere, and you do not have to say why. You don't have to
say your disability. You know, the only two questions people can ask is, like, is that dog, you know, trained to help you with a disability, and what tasks is it trained to perform that help aid in your, you know, daily functioning with your disability. Like, that's all they can say. They can't say, what's your disability? Like, we were telling them so much more.
Yeah. Like, legally, normally, we are used to not having to disclose for things. We can get services without having to to rehash our traumatic medical histories. And we all have been through different medical traumas, some even more than others, you know, but we were having to share that aloud and rehash it, and not only rehash it, but like make it, what's the word? Like validate it somehow, you know, like make it bad enough for them to care, or, you know.
We had to essentially, like, make it our entire identities just in order to get an accommodation. Like, hey, we're not people, we're diagnoses, and this is why. And, like, we're not for legal reasons, we're not accusing Disney of violating the ADA. I think technically they were asking questions about functional limitations, which is allowed. But like, and you know, makes some sense in this context, because even back in 2022, when I had gotten my DAS with my family, I still had to kind of explain the functional limitations that having this, you know, having my issue with dehydration causes me. But like, there's a point where we were doing that for everything, and we were, like Case said, we were throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? Like, we were bringing out every diagnosis we've ever had. Just to find the magic key that will unlock the door to get a basic accommodation that used to be basic.
And it's like, if a group like us can't get the DAS, nobody can. Because our group together, cumulatively, had like 50
and I
disabilities.
think you said that. You were like, I think this group... Yeah, you were like, this group has more disabilities than you'll probably ever see in one place.
I said, if we can't get... Yeah, I literally did say that. Yeah. We were all doing, you know, our best to speak up for ourselves. We were also just tired, and we were like, this is like, feels like a battle we're not going to win. Yeah. And the medical expert did nothing. He was of no help.
He was equally as useless as the cast member.
As the first guy. Yeah. So yeah, like
it was so wild. Like, at the end, they apparently threw in some extra passes, quote unquote, for our troubles. I don't even know what they fully were. I think they were like a couple of lightning lanes that we didn't end up needing because we had the DAS, believe it or not.
Yeah, we got it. Shock. Oh my god.
Wow.
Blood,
what
sweat,
a
and
crazy
tears.
thought.
And it was like a whole hour and a half out of our day, you know, to try to do that. And yeah, we got it, but a lot of people take a full hour and a half and they
don't get it. We barely got it. We got really lucky, but it was, you know, people probably pass through that kind of humiliation every single day, and it is appalling to think about that. And, you know, they were like, well, we hope you have a great day when everything was all said and done. I was like, well, it's got to go up from here, doesn't it?
She did say that. That's right. She did say that.
It felt like the unhappiest place on earth.
Yeah, it did. It felt like a terrible interrogation.
Like an active nightmare. And
that we had to prove our disability, as if, like, saying it is not enough. You have to prove... Oh, are you blind? Prove it. Prove how blind you are. Prove how it affects you. You know, it's wild. It's wild.
It took a lot of, like, you know... deep breathing and like mental context switching in order to actually enjoy the rest of our day at Disney. And we did enjoy it, but there were times that we were like, you know, waiting in lines. Even though we have the DAS, like, you still often have to wait in still a shorter line, right? It's like the former Fast Pass or the Lightning Lane. If you jump into that, you still have to wait in a short line. But it's not as long as the regular one. So, like, we would be walking around waiting in shorter lines, and we would be like, wow, you guys, like, can you believe that happened? Yeah. We were still, like, working through it the entire, like, rest of the trip. But we still had fun.
Oh, yeah, we had a great time. We kind of had to, like, push it down at the moment. And then I think, like, later after we got back is when we kind of rehashed it of, like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But for that time being, we knew we had to, like, forget about it in order to just, like, go on with our day. And I'm really glad we were able to, because if we had just had a crappy day, we would have let them win and let that situation ruin our day. And I'm glad we didn't. And we had a great time. If you want to hear about the great time, that we talked about that on our last episode. So we're not going to, like, talk about that again. And I think Disneyland is really charming. And once we got in there, it was very charming and great. And the cast members were very helpful with us and very nice. And we were able to navigate it well. And
for the most part, like, I would say that Magic Kingdom is pretty easy to navigate. And when we had any doubts, we would just, like, find the nearest cast member and ask them, like, hey, are we heading in the right direction for X attraction? And most of the time they would try to, like, they would be a little descriptive, but even sometimes they would, like, let us follow them. So it really was, like, overall a pleasant experience. Also, we got some, like, great tips for where to be for the fireworks from other cast members. So, like, I feel like everyone else was trying to help us out. And again, I don't necessarily blame the employee and the quote-unquote medical expert.
No.
I think that they were just following the directions from above.
Right.
That being said, those directions from above are bad. They're so bad.
And I don't think this can last much longer. I think Disney will end up getting sued because people are going to, like, probably pass out in the line or whatever is going to happen. And then I know there have been petitions going around. I signed one. I don't know what that, I think one of them has, like, over 200,000 signatures or something like that.
Imagine having something like POTS. People with POTS probably can't wait in line. Like, and they don't have a mental disability.
Right, and they can't get, like, with these qualifications, they can't get it. They
can't
get it.
They
My mom's a great example. She really needs that.
Your mom has a lot of chronic health things going on.
She has a lot of physical health issues, and then they'll say, well, use a wheelchair. And it's like, but if you're able to walk, that's just really a lot to lug around. Like, as for someone like my mom, like, yeah, a chair can be helpful in a park like that. And even one of our friends with us sometimes uses a chair at the park. But it is just like an extra thing if you're not a typical wheelchair user, like, in your everyday life.
Right.
And that's just not a great solution of, like, just use a wheelchair. It's like, no, let us have the disability pass so that we don't have to stand that long all the time. Like,
and, like, we've used it before. We know how much of a difference it can make in our experience of the parks. Also, like, even just thinking of the group of us, like, all of us were visually impaired. All of us. So things take longer, period.
Yes.
Like,
yes, a
lot
longer.
We were able to navigate the park pretty effectively, but, like, who was leading the group? Someone with a visual impairment. Like, it's just going to take a while. And together we were able to figure it out. But, like, if we can, like, make that the line experience shorter to even compensate for the fact that walking around the park takes a while because we're still trying to figure out what's going on around us and it's bright. It just, there are so many reasons why the current system is not cutting it at all for people with, and I don't even know, there's so many types of disabilities, but for at least our group, we highly benefited from having the DAS, but we only got it because of one reason that was pretty much irrelevant to being able to stand in line.
It is so strange, and I really hope things change, and I really think they will. And I'm not saying that this episode is going to go viral and make a big difference, but I do hope maybe somebody will see it or hear it. I don't know. But I hope, along with our voices, that other people are also sharing their stories and that we're all sharing our stories about this. Because right after it happened, one of our friends in the group was like, you got to make a podcast episode about that.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah. And we were like, we will. And that's what the pod is for. Whenever we go through crappy moments regarding our disability in our life, we're always like, well, at least we can tell the story on the pod. Whether that be to kind of laugh at it, or whether it be like this, more of like a call to action of like a we're hoping for change kind of thing. And we know we're just one little podcast, but we're hoping a lot of people speak out about this and that it does make a difference and that our voices are heard.
I will put one of the petition links that we've signed in the show notes. So if you can go to our website, rarewithflair.com, you'll see our latest episode, or whenever you listen to this, it'll be attached to this episode's show notes. Give it a quick sign, maybe. I think that would be awesome. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but like can't hurt, right? It's easy
at least
to do.
Read through it. I think what it says is good, and it really explains it well and explains the issues. And there are a lot of good comments. I left a comment too. So there are a lot of good comments there, and we hope that eventually change will happen and things can maybe go back to how they were.
If you're going to Disney in the near future, until this hopefully in a great ideal world gets changed, we would not recommend trying to get a DAS, honestly. Save yourself the trouble. And I guess try to wait in a standby line or decide if you want to pay that extra. I wouldn't recommend doing that either, because I don't think Disney should get that win. But like, do what you need to do. But like, unless you have some kind of mental disability, like they say, in which case you could qualify, which would be awesome. But if you don't, like us, save yourself the humiliation.
And I think that's their goal, is they are making it as difficult as humanly possible so that no one will even try anymore. And then
it's so embarrassing because they're making the parks places that people with disabilities can't go anymore.
Yeah.
Like they are like kind of unintentionally segregating and making this an unequal and inequitable experience because we can't get basic accommodations.
Yep. It's true, and it's really upsetting. So Disney, do better.
Yeah, we love Disney. We've gone to the park so many times over our lives and like have enjoyed it immensely. We love a lot of the content that they make, and like, we would expect a company that claims to be focused on, diversity or whatever, that like they should give a crap. Like, I don't know. I love Disney, and I have hope that they can change for the better. I have hope that this can change. I have hope that their animated movies will one day be good again. So there's a lot of things I have, and that I was wondering if you were gonna say
that does not count Inside Out 2 because that's Pixar.
Inside Out 2
I'm talking
was
about
phenomenal, but that was
Disney
Pixar,
animation. Yeah. Disney animation. I'm talking to you.
The atrocity that was Wish.
I love your films, but do better, because also your films are bad now. So that's a problem.
I don't know what's going on, y'all. Like, maybe let go of the petty cash grabs. That could be a start.
That could be a start.
When would they do that?
Yeah, never. We need to care about art and people more than money, but that's not how the world works. So.
Unfortunately, our prediction has been that something big is going to happen, either legally or financially, to Disney in order for them to have to take, honestly, several steps back in order to correct course. We don't know all that's going on. We can't necessarily speak as experts, but from a lay person's perspective and from the perspective of people that got the losing end of this like inequitable DAS experience, like, man.
Yeah, because Universal hasn't changed their disability service yet, and hopefully they won't, but a lot of people are going to be moving on over there for a while, I think. And
it's difficult still. Like, it is kind of like an ordeal to get their disability pass. Like, you have to get like a physician's note, but frankly, at this rate, I would so much rather fill out a physician's note than not get it at all.
Right, that's what if Disney wants to make it more difficult, that's what they need to do, is just a physician's note, because gosh, we have ample reason to get a physician's note with our group we were with. We have a million reasons. So, yeah.
And like, they're not even going by like the legal definition of disability, which that exists, right?
Yeah.
And some people don't qualify, and that's why like a functional approach is probably best, and how it does affect people's daily lives. But truly, there's no need for an interrogation in order to understand those needs, and how it affects people in their jobs. Like, I just... So much of those questions were not even relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. The groceries? Oh, my gosh.
Like, why did I need to say that? Why did I need to disclose the fact that I can't drive a car? Like, just, how is that relevant to right now being able to stand in line when we Ubered here? Like,
no idea.
Crazy. But anyway, trying to end this on a positive note, like, I believe, like you were saying, we believe change is possible. And I think that's where we'll have to...
I really do believe it is. Like, I think change is coming based on the outrage, and I'm hoping that it does. It's kind of like... It's like the disability activists of yesteryear, of the past. Like, they have had to fight when change wasn't happening, and our community, we're fighters. So, we're going to keep fighting this, and hopefully they listen. So,
yeah. But in the meantime... We hope that you guys have a really great 2 weeks, like great, and that you don't have to like fight so hard for basic needs.
Yep.
We wish that for all of you.
Absolutely. We love you all. Thank you for listening.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye! Bye!